Georgia was a hoax. Because black people don't think that way and don't act that way. And then also, they came up with the Freedom Bureau, okay? And the Freedom Bureau offered them what we would call welfare today. In fact, the Freedom Bureau was a welfare agency. You know what they told them? We will not accept any material help unless you give me a job. And then the government was bragging about the program didn't cost anything, because they took the job that offset the cost. In other words, workfare they call it now. I mean, they would call it workfare. Okay. Then I told you before that they said they wanted religious instruction for themselves and education for their children. But here's the deal. James D. Lynch, who was at that meeting with Sherman in that 40 acre and a mule thing, he said in 1865 that blacks didn't trust nobody except white people to be their ministers. And the reason why is they had been conditioned accepting that fake religion of man Jesus in slavery that was set up to keep them in slavery. Okay? But it took them a while for them to get out of that. But here's the deal with that. The commission said that black people is more interested in the rules of the church than the rules of God. Okay? That's what they found out. And then they said black people has more religiosity, but it does not translate into high moral conduct. In other words, they do a lot of shouting and singing and all this kind of stuff, and go out and commit sin and drink liquor and have sex and all this kind of stuff. Just like everybody else, but it seems like we go to extreme. Now this is a government report on us. Now, but what they also said, that because black men, because they of the work schedule, they didn't have time to spend with their children and their mother. Okay? But the commission said, even though they don't spend much time, the time that they do spend is quality time. And the kids turn out okay. Now, what about this old rigmarole about it has to be a male in the household? No. It need to be a male in the household, but he's willing to spend all his time as quality time with his children and their mother.
So then you disagree with the, I guess you can call it a narrative, but it was actually Aretha Franklin's eulogy. Reverend Jasper Williams said that a woman can't raise a man, can't raise a boy to be a man.
That's because that is the narrative. The narrative disagrees with that statement.
I would say so.
Right, and also speaking of Aretha Franklin, also in that funeral they said that Aretha Franklin has done everything in her life that Donald Trump has not. Okay? And
Can you give me some examples?
looking out for your brother, your fellow man. You know, and you know, she was very educated. She believed in helping her people. She believed in advancing civil rights and all this, and you know, and she was in the forefront of the civil rights movement. Of course, we didn't see her there, but she was supportive of Martin Luther King, all that kind of stuff. That would not be Donald Trump.
Absolutely.
All right, but also in that thing is that remember I said that Aretha Franklin, I mean that about Serena Williams, you know, and all, you know, and all this, but what the reason why it was, and I said about the man not living up to his responsibility. His responsibility was RESPCT. Is that right?
RESPECT, but yes.
Okay. Thank you, because I can't spell Waffle. Okay. All right. Okay. And that also means not calling women out of their names, not calling Omarosa a dog,
Exactly.
a non-human. That's what a dog is, a non-human. During slavery, they didn't call them dogs, they called them wenches. And a wench is a bitch, which is a female dog. You know.
I appreciate that breakdown. I'm serious because, you know, people were offended by that statement, but the way that you break it down, that is the mentality. And we have to remember that number 45 is actually 71 years old. So you can't tell me that he has a modern view of racial relations. I feel as though his view of racial relations are those of the 50s, 60s, 70s. How people treated African Americans. His mentality is that today.
Well, his views is not that of the 50s, 60s, 70s. His views is that of the 1850s, 60s, and 70s. That was during the administration of Andrew Johnson. Andrew Johnson said and did the same thing that Donald Trump is doing now. Andrew Johnson said that black women were wenches. Andrew Johnson decided to unite America, because it just came out of the Civil War. He decided to unite America by turning the North and the South white people against black people in the South. By saying, these people here is taking over. These people is a threat to us. These people are taking over the government. These people are doing this, you know, doing that. Everything that is stereotypical about black folks, that's what he did. That is what Donald Trump is doing. Donald Trump is doing. Donald Trump brought a white nationalist into the White House as his advisor.
Mm-hmm.
Huh? Okay? During the Andrew Johnson administration, remember Andrew Johnson started as the vice president of Abraham Lincoln and doing all that, okay?
Not Abraham Lincoln.
He said the same thing, because Abraham Lincoln says that I like Russia. I like Russians because the tyrants is able to exhibit their precious, pure metal and not a diluted brown alloy in relationship to refugees, Negroes, and Catholics. Those are the people that they was having trouble with then. Of course, Donald Trump's having trouble. He had an issue with refugees, blacks, refugees, and Catholics. But he substitute Catholic for Muslim. You see? So Trump is doing the same thing. He's doing the same thing in the same way. He's pretending that he has improved the economy. Yeah? Because after the Civil War, the United States was economic shambles. And guess how Johnson did this? He did it by breaking the treaties, the agreements, and with the rest of the world, the other nations of the world, and that caused further instability in the world. Trump is, and guess what? During Johnson's administration, there was war in Afghanistan. There was war in Iraq. There was war in Sudan. There was trade issues with Cuba. There was issues on the Mexican border.
So it's basically just.
It's the same now.
Yes.
In other words, Trump administration and the United States is repeating the United States between 1861 and 1877, including the deal they made with Rutherford B. Hayes with the Electoral College, because there was some kind of controversy about the Electoral College and Trump being elected. In 1877, the United States had some kind of issue with the Electoral College, and so they made a deal with Rutherford B. Hayes. They would make him president if he would take the federal troops out of the South so we can do our thing to these black people down here. Mm-hmm. That's the idea. I need to go now, and one more thing. The Vincent Smith narrative said that slavery perverts the Word of God. In slavery, the Ten Commandments are perverted. For example, honor thy mother and father, that thy way may be long upon this land I've given you. Well, in slavery, the slaves were not allowed to honor their fathers and their mother. They were not even to talk to them. They couldn't honor their ancestors. When the new slaves came on the plantation, they were punished if they told them anything about Africa or what they did in Africa and all this other stuff and all that kind of stuff. Which means they grow up with this idea that they came from nothing because the slave master told them they were savages from Africa and all this kind of stuff. And if they didn't enslave them, they were doing them a favor. They'd be running wild like savages in Africa. That was that commandment. And guess what? The kids on the plantation did not know any better. But the slave masters knew better. Why? Because Hannibal Smith was brought to Iron Station to work in the iron furnaces because he had a superior knowledge of iron manufacturing. And he increased the iron furnaces efficiency 40% at Vesuvius down here in Iron Station. Exactly that was during slavery. Okay, in 1900, the same family who owned Vesuvius wrote a history about how they went down to Charleston and picked these slaves up and brought them up there. You know what they said? When you brought them up there, they were so stupid and savage. They was eating their hog's raw, didn't know how to use a fork and spoon, and in other words, white people have always hid our own history from us. And it's because we don't know the history ourselves. Thank you for coming. And finish with our little program, but I want to do a conclusion. You saw Mrs. Barbara Brooks Killian. Miss Barbara Brooks Killian was a descendant from an Irish woman named uh, Elizabeth Brooks. Elizabeth Brooks had a daughter named Sarah, and Sarah was taken to North Carolina, in Cleveland County, and then the Porters took her and put her, kept her for a while. Then they took her to another family, and then that family passed on to another family. And which is about 19, one of the custodial families came forward and says that she was their slave. Now, in North Carolina, blacks could not sue white people in court, or she had no rights and all that kind of stuff. So the Porters came forward and went to court for her. And they explained that she was free because her mother was free. Her mother was a free white woman. And the court ruled that she was never a slave. So therefore, her son had been sold into slavery. His name was Jerry Brooks. So he became, as a court ruling, he became free too. And anyway, she lived there in West Cleveland County, and say we're going to say Kings Mountain or something like that. And she is the ancestor of Mel Watts, who was the transportation secretary under Obama, who is still on the job now. He was a holdover in the Trump administration. She was also the ancestor of me. She's the ancestor of most of the blacks in Iron Station. And she's the ancestor of Arthur Ashe. She's the ancestor of Elizabeth Catholic Mora. She's the ancestor of Glendale Brooks, a former mayor of Gastonia. She is the ancestor of Ronnie Brooks, who was in the Olympics in Rio. I can go on and on and on. She has about 20,000 descendants someplace in the United States. But another thing I want to mention is that Malagasco, I gave you the definition. Malagasco means being obsessed with yellow women. That is the Dutch. The Dutch created that because they were obsessed with yellow women. Those women that we would call mulatto, but they call them Malagasco, and that word exists no place else except in the colonial areas of the United States by the Dutch. In other words, New York, Connecticut, and Massachusetts, because that's where the Dutch settled when they came there. And Baltimore, by the way, has the highest percentage of Malagasco slaves. And you say, well, skin color had, it got to do with where you were a slave or not. In this case, it did, because the Malagasco was people that were descended from Madagascar, and they were called Malagasy. The Dutch was obsessed with those slaves because they were people of color, but they supposedly did not have African descent. Okay, let's go back to Madagascar. Okay, the Dutch started taking slaves from Madagascar and from South India. And they were so prized that the Dutch often married these Madagascar women. And that gave rise to the term Black Dutch, you see? Now, but here's the thing about that. The thing about having no African blood was a figment of their imagination, because even though these people came from India and came from Madagascar and all these places, they definitely had African blood, because the Indians are ethnic Ethiopians, you see? And this, what the name, Nikki Haley, the ambassador to the United Nations, she's an Indian.
Former governor of South Carolina.
For the governor of South Carolina. She would kill you if you say that she was African, you know, and an Ethiopian, you know. But these people, remember I was telling you about the Melungeon people and and the Sicilians. These are people with African descent, but they have what you call Negrophobia. In other words, they resent and fight against you calling them Africans. That's what Madagascar means. Now, Dukandari means, is a Swahili word that means shop, mall, booth, market. But the Dutch made it means Africans have no value except to make white people rich. And dowry means shiny, glitter, it means pearl, it means that which is desired to possess and have. Okay? And then let's talk about these names. This guy, Bro Tier, supposed to have a brother named Suzaduka. Suzaduka means, in Swahili, means future. If you break it down into two words, Suza and Duka, it means be able to sell like hotcakes, you know. And also it means to devalue something in order to sell it. What we're talking about there is the dozen as in slavery. What black people like to play, the dozen. That's what it means. You know, inferior, you lower the price of an inferior product. Okay, that's what Suzaduka means. And it had another brother called Kondazu. Now, Kondazu, like I said, the language was Swahili, but sometimes there were no word for it in the Swahili language, so therefore they used German. So Kundazu means throw something good in the deal, something to boot. Yeah, I say this, but I'll in other words, it's German word. It's not a word. It's an idiomatic expression, which says something into the deal. Okay. Now, what we're going to do now is go on this tour, and this, like I said, this was the Mount Vernon Roosevelt School. I attended this school from the first grade to the 7th grade. And you can see here, they have dropped that ceiling. That ceiling is a high ceiling, but they dropped that ceiling and put the lights in there and all that kind of stuff. And this right here is the bathroom. And this happens to be a ladies' bathroom. But when I was going to school here, this was a cloakroom. The cloakroom was here, and had a cloakroom on the other end. Now, you come this way, we get to this part. And it looked like it's a room divider. It is. But when I was here, they had doors across here, folding doors, where the principal come in there and he would pull these doors across like that and separate that from that. And each side, they had a potbelly stove. Potbelly stove was here. And this was the chimney, the chimneys in here, and all this kind of stuff. And they had a coal pile out there. So then in October or November, the county would bring out this coal and put it in that coal house, and then they had coal to burn through the winter. However, they would bring that coal out there in November, and December they had to bring another load. Why? Because the people in the community was coming up here getting the coal and burning it in their homes and all that kind of stuff, you know. And like I said, okay, now this is the other room. This is the room, the 7th grade. They had this row was the 4th grade, and then the next row the 5th grade, and 6th grade, and then the 7th grade. And then we left here and went to the high school up there in Lincoln, called Newbold High School. Now, what we got here is look like a cloakroom, and then they got this platform here. It looked like a stage, but it's not a stage. It is when the church bought the school, they put the baptizing pool here, and this is the top of the baptizing pool. And let's go over here, right? Here we go through this door. Yeah. This is the kitchen of the fellowship hall. However, when the church was built, when the school was built, this was the industrial room. And this style is one of the styles in the floor plans that they built. They had several floor plans they built, and this was the industrial room. They were supposed to, because Booker T. Washington started the Roosevelt Fund, and all of them, and his friend Julius Rosenwald started giving money for it, and they built over 5,000 schools in the South, and 600 in North Carolina, and 6 in Lincoln County. And he envisioned an area where, called the industrial area, where they was gonna, teach sewing and this, that, and stuff. It was an industrial room, okay? And we want to thank you. That in our tour inside, we're gonna go outside and continue the tour. This is, you ready? This is the exterior of Mount Vernon Rosenwald School. The thing about the exterior is that we are now trying to get it on the National Register of Historic Places. It's in that process right now. But the Register of Historic Places has taken exception to what we have done to the school. For example, we have now siding. They said that this siding has to come off, and the original wood is behind it. Also, these windows. The windows came from up top all the way down, and it was that wide. They were double pane, and they made it small. Put small windows, and the other part of the windows are inside the wall here, which means once you take the siding off, you have exposed the windows, and then the matter then is putting the glass and the pane back in the windows. Over here, where this basketball goal was, that was the approximate area where the coal bin was, and right down here near that big tree, they had a pump. One of them pumps that you pump water, and then had a swing set, which was not really a swing set. Somebody took some pipes and put them together and made what they call and put swings on them, put chains and wood on it, and made it swings. And in the back had a big field there all the way back. that was where we had our ball field and such. Now, when they built the Rosenwald School, there was already a school here. It was called Mount Vernon Academy. Right exactly where this truck is here is where the school was. Okay? So what they did was they built the Rosenwald School, and then they tore this school down, and that's where you got the parking lot, you see. And I think that's it. The fund did not build any schools. The Rosenwald Fund provided money to build a school. There had to be matching funds from the county and matching funds from the black people in that community. The money to build this school from the black community came from the church, from all the churches, just like the ones in Lincoln came from the church up there called Moore's Chapel, Amy Zion. The one in Tucker's Grove came from the Tucker Grove Church, you know, from the community. In other words, no one person just contributed money. They contributed money to the church, and the church contributed money to the fund. Thank you.
Amen. Amen. God woke us up this morning.
Amen.
Starting us on another day. Amen. KT, would you turn down white just a little bit for me? So they let me know that there is a heaven somewhere. Amen. Amen. Because God is blessing. Just a little bit. God is blessing us, even though